Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to Beyond the Veil, a podcast on psychic protection, spiritual hygiene, and navigating the ebbs and flows of the healing journey as you learn to master both your sovereign and shadow selves. My name is Lauren on Earth, your host, and I know I said I was going to do a Q&A for this episode, but I had to record a little bit early. I think I'm still waiting on a couple of questions to come in. Some of the questions are really great, and I decided that I'm going to make them their own separate episode. For example, a deep dive into dragons and the dragon consciousness, and then the Kundalini and Reiki. So that's coming, and maybe the Q&A will be next time. Maybe after, once those questions come pouring in, we'll go ahead and record that episode as well. But today we're going to talk about the flat earth theories. And I'm going to start by saying that I'm sharing theories. I'm not claiming anything as truth. And I also believe that before we go and claim something as true, we should do our own research as much as we can and not blindly make these decisions, especially into understanding why this is a theory, why people think this way, because there is a reason that people hold this belief. And I feel like a lot of people on this topic kind of shut it down and are like, absolutely not, without having taken the time to dissect it, to critical think, to separate the ego. So that's the intention of today's episode, to share some information, some theories, explain why people believe that the earth is flat, and then you decide from there. But also definitely listen to part 2 when it comes out, because this is kind of just the introduction. I do go deep in this episode. It does get quite biblical. I do bring in science, but I'm preparing you guys for something else. So for me, this theory came into my field in 2018 while I was in Thailand. And when that theory came in, my immediate reaction was LOL, no. The earth is not flat. What is this nonsense? And then I get home from Thailand and I go into work. And I work on Washington Boulevard in LA. And right across from my job, there's this empty lot. It's construction with this fence around the entire property. And in my shop, there was a huge window. That was my view. There was so much fence where they could have put this sign, but they put the sign right in front of my building that says the earth is flat. So I was like, oh, that's weird. We just talked about this. Is this a message? Do I need to take this as a sign in some way? Is this true? And I just remember having this like almost like pit in my stomach of knowing that it means something. I just don't think I was ready to go there back then. And especially the people I was with were very adamant that this was not true as well, so it seemed out there, it seemed crazy. And I remember thinking it was odd, letting it go. And I also didn't know where to find the proper resources back then. Like, I don't even think I did that much research on it until I hear this story about a girl who was on a flight from Lisbon, Portugal to JFK. And someone on the flight was having a serious health issue and they had to do an emergency landing to the closest airport. So they're in the middle of the ocean at this point, and everyone is watching the flight map and they're noticing they're making this sharp right turn somewhere in Canada. I think it was called St. John's. If you want to go look at the globe map and the flat earth map, from Portugal to JFK with an emergency stop at the closest place, which was St. John's, Canada. And everyone on the plane was like, why? How is this the fastest route? Because on the globe map, the closest would be we just go straight to New York. So this girl was doing research trying to figure this out, and she came across a flat earth map. And if you look at it from that perspective, that place in Canada was actually closest. And so then I start hearing pilots talk about this, and I find out that they use the flat earth map. That's the map they use. And there was one pilot, and there's a video of him saying pretty much matter of fact, the earth is flat. And he laughs and he's like, I know the earth is flat. So there's that. And he's not the only one that has come out to say this as well. So where I stand on all of this is this feels more likely to me than the theory about the globe and us spinning a million miles through space. And I'm not claiming or declaring anything as true. If you want to know my personal belief, I think that this feels most accurate to me, and I'm going to explain why. So, as you guys know, I'm pretty deep in the star system lore, and there's a star, Polaris. We all know it. It's the North Star, and Polaris does not move in the night sky. And side note, some of you might have heard me tell this story already just while I'm on the topic of my own belief. I also kind of believe that outer space is not vast space. It's not what we think it is. And I do believe in the firmament. And if you didn't catch, I don't know if it was an episode or me talking somewhere at some point, I basically had this experience in ayahuasca where I saw the real universe and there was no space. You're not traveling on starships out to other planets to go to those planets. Yes, there are starships in our atmosphere inside the firmament. I'm still learning how all of this works. This is just what I see and what I believe. But in this vision, everything was on top of each other and everything was corded into each other. So like you had these dimensions they were like pockets. So you'd have like the first dimension, and then underneath would be like the eighth dimension and the sixth dimension and then the second dimension. And it doesn't go like 1, 2, 3, 4 in terms of the dimensions, but everything was compact and everything was corded into each other. And the density of that specific pocket basically determined the dimension. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, I recognize this place. I've been here before. And then I started to become aware that this is the universe. Like that was the message I was receiving. This is what the universe looks like. And then I had this whole experience there when I was jumping from place to place to place. But I remember just, not doing anything with that because how do I explain this? I don't know. And I never went back there, in all of the ceremonies I've done since, but I knew in my soul in that moment, like I knew I had been there before and I knew what I was seeing was real. And I've also heard some other theories that space is actually underground, beneath us, beneath the ocean. The ocean will definitely be a deep dive that we get into because there's some interesting stuff coming up there as well. I don't know about that, just a theory. Again, I'm just listening, observing, taking it all in. And while we're on the topic, let me just get it all out there. There's also this theory that the planets are fallen angels. And, we'll come back to that. Okay. So, Polaris. Science says the Earth is spinning at about 1,000 miles per hour while also circling the sun, while the galaxy is also traveling at about 1.3 million miles per hour through space that I don't really know if that exists. So keep all of that in mind and then come back to the thought that Polaris does not move in the night sky. Why is that? So there are theories that say Polaris is God's throne room. And if we tie into what I learned with galactic astrology, first, the Polaris placements are very rare. I don't see it that often, but Polaris is definitely the frequency of unity consciousness and harmony. And the beings of Polaris are highly advanced spiritual beings, many of them devoting themselves to Earth's evolution. So the North Star, or Polaris, also sits right above the North Pole, which I believe is a portal to other worlds, but it's also not what we think it is or not what we've been told it is. So I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was this celebrity, I think maybe a celebrity, maybe a researcher who went to the North Pole. His name was Richard Byrd. And he basically said that there is a landmass as large as the continent, as large as a continent that sits just beyond the South Pole. And then even nowadays, there are these whispers and rumors that Antarctica is not ice, but lush and full of life, kind of like the Garden of Eden. So we know celebrities fly out there. I do believe they have their own world out there. It's not just ice. That's intuitively what I feel. Obviously, I can't prove that because they've hidden, they're in charge of our maps, which we know are not fully accurate. And I also believe they have their own world underground here on Earth, below the Earth. And I don't know if you guys saw this video, but there was an ex-Starbucks employee who worked in a tunnel below LA. There was a Starbucks inside of a tunnel below LA. And maybe this connects to the underground tunnels where they're ushering children and doing unspeakable things. In this video, he basically said that the celebrities, the wealthy, have their own underground system in LA so they can get places without being in traffic. And there's a Starbucks down there. Believe what you want. I don't know, but just thought that was kind of interesting. So, anyway, I believe they're lying about Antarctica, about the North Pole, about what's really going on there. And so just keep all of this in mind. I know I'm jumping around, but it's all going to connect. So I really just don't feel like we are spinning around and flying through space at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I feel like we are here. We are stationed. And that's just me. But, maybe time will tell. So I mentioned the firmament, and I want to expand on that a little bit more because the book of Enoch talks about the firmament and basically describes it as this solid dome like structure that basically separates the earth from the heavens. And it describes the universe having multiple layers, various heavens and realms where different types of beings exist. And I said universe, but I meant to say earth. It describes the earth as having multiple layers, but I feel like both are true. And so there are some Bible verses that talk about the firmament. And in Genesis 1:6, it says, "And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters," basically insinuating that there are waters above us and waters below us. Then in 1:7, it says, "And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament." The word firmament means solid thing. So basically, what I'm getting from this is everything is in the firmament, not out, which also coincides with what I saw in ayahuasca. And it's all within this dome. Then in Ezekiel 10:1, he says, "And then I looked, and behold, in the firmament that was above the head of the cherubims, there appeared over them as if it were a sapphire stone, as the appearance of the likeness of the throne," basically insinuating the throne of God is above the firmament. In Revelation 4:6, it says, "And before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal," basically saying the firmament looks like it's made of glass, or the word I point out here is crystal. But again, in John 37:18, he says something again, and this one I didn't have written down, but it talked about the glass again and basically saying that it looked like glass or molten glass. So, yeah, I kind of believe that the stars and the sun all move around us and we're stationary. And if you look at some of the maps that they've created to show this with the firmament, it kind of makes a lot of sense. I'm going to try to find it and link it in the show notes. In the show notes, I will also share a map of flat Earth and then a map of old flat Earth, because both of them are going to be important for what I'm talking about today. So, going back to Antarctica for a moment, if you look at this flat Earth map and you see these ice walls that are blocking out another layer of land of civilization, and you see that this explorer seeing the land beyond the ice, and the map is showing that. If you look at the old Earth map, okay, it's a little bit different, obviously. And in the book of Genesis, they describe this map. So basically, they say that that circular landmass that if you're looking at it in the middle, was the Garden of Eden. And that sits directly above the North Pole, as does Polaris, God's throne room. And you have these ideas and theories as well that came out and said, we're moving away from Polaris, blah, 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 science. And this was actually a thought kind of started and created from the Freemasons. And I feel too that there is subconscious programming going on here, but I did do some more research and I'm going to share that with you because apparently the North Star does change. But maybe it is subconscious programming of trying to pull us farther from God. I'm going to read verbatim what I found from the web when I'm asking these questions. So I got Polaris is currently near the North Celestial Pole, making it our current North Star. However, it wasn't always in this position, nor will it be forever. About 3,000 years ago, the North Star was a different star called Thuban in the constellation Draco, the reptilians. Over thousands of years, the celestial pole will continue to move away from Polaris and eventually align with other stars. In roughly 13,000 years, for example, Vega in the constellation Lyra will be closer to the North Pole and will become the new North Star for that time. So then I asked how scientists know Polaris is moving away from the North Pole, and this is what they said. And they said it's due to axial precision. So basically, axial precision is this slow, what we learned in school, this slow circular wobble of the Earth's rotational axis. And this wobble causes these celestial poles to trace out the circle over a 26,000 year period. So they also said the Egyptian pyramids were aligned with the North Star at the time. Thuban of the Draco constellation was the North Star, providing this reference for the changing position of the North Pole, which I find so fascinating. I feel like there's a whole rabbit hole with that alone. And we're gonna go down it, but we're just gonna leave it here for now. I'm gonna keep going with this old flat Earth map. So if you look at the map, you'll see a rock in the very middle. That rock is called Black Rock. We all know Black Rock. Interesting. And we all know that they take these powerful names and distort them and invert them and use them to mean something totally different to take us even farther from our truth. And then something had me look up the meaning of Antarctica, because I was looking up, I forget what word I was just looking up, but I find that what they name certain things are also very significant. So I found that Antarctica is of Greek origin. Arcticos is a Greek word that means land of the bear. And according to ChatGPT, this is a reference to the constellation Ursa Minor, or the Great Bear that is visible in the Northern Hemisphere associated with the North Pole. So Ursa Minor is the constellation that Polaris is in. It's the Little Dipper for anyone who, we all know the Little Dipper, and it's called the Great Bear. So Antarctica comes from the word Arcticos, which means the Great Bear, and anti, we all know that word, which means opposite. So according to Google, Antarctica was named because it lies opposite the Arctic region on the globe. You can look at it that way. That makes total logical sense. Duh, of course. But we also have to look for clues and the hidden meaning of things as well. And you can also say that maybe it means opposite to the bear. So if the constellation Ursa Minor is called the bear and Polaris is in that constellation that is known as the seat of God, opposite God, anti God, maybe it's a stretch, maybe, I don't know. You decide for yourself. But I think it's important to look at words, and I don't think that's a coincidence. But their reason for why Antarctica is named what it is does make a lot of logical sense and would be a very fine answer for a lot of people, you know? And it's 222. So I asked the internet some more questions, and I wanted to understand why science thinks that Polaris doesn't move. And I'm going to read verbatim what was shared. Flat Earth proponents sometimes claim that Polaris doesn't move because the Earth is flat and stationary, while the stars are supposedly rotating around a fixed point above the Earth. They argue that if the Earth were a rotating sphere, there would be more noticeable shift in the position of Polaris. However, this argument fails to take into account the laws of astronomy, specifically that the Earth's axial tilt and rotation cause stars to appear to revolve around celestial poles. The absence of significant movement of Polaris is exactly what you would expect on a spherical Earth with the northern pole aligned closely with Polaris. On a spherical Earth, Polaris appears nearly stationary due to the Earth's axial tilt. As the Earth rotates, the stars seem to move around the celestial pole. The rotation of the Earth on its axis causes us to see the stars move in circular arcs, but because Polaris is nearly in line with the North Pole, it remains in a fixed position. Okay, sure. Now, if I wasn't down the rabbit hole and didn't feel like so much of what we've been taught was a lie, I would be like, yeah, that makes sense to my brain as best as it can and would probably leave it at that, you know? But something tells me that there's more to it. Because wouldn't that mean like most of the stars around the pole wouldn't move either? If Polaris is in Ursa Minor, right? It's the end of the Little Dipper. Wouldn't like none of those stars in the Little Dipper move in the night sky? Like, wouldn't that whole constellation not move at all? So then I asked if the Little Dipper moves, and I hear yes, the Little Dipper moves in the night sky. It appears to rotate around the fixed point of Polaris, the North Star, due to Earth's rotation. So I'm not the biggest science person, like to where my brain would really understand something like that, but I'm not understanding this. So maybe some of you are understanding it. Um, but this isn't making like sense to me. You know what I mean? So if it moves around Polaris, why wouldn't they all move in the same way? Why do all of these stars just move around Polaris? It's very confusing. Something's fishy. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think with this. So, getting into the Bible now, there are many accounts that mention flat earth, obviously in the old Bible, but they've been taken out in the new and the words have been replaced. So the Bible does not flat out say flat earth, but there are people that believe that it did. Obviously, we don't all have access to these old Bibles anymore, but I'm just going to share a couple of verses that have come from the Bible where people think that maybe this is kind of proving the flat earth theory. So the Bible talks about the four corners of the earth, and it isn't just mentioned once. And so flat earthers say, well, how is it possible if the earth is round? How are there four corners of a circle? There's also a verse in the Bible that says God set earth on its foundation so that it will never move. And that is like what I feel like. I feel like we are here and things are moving around us. But, if you look at these drawings, that they've created of what they believe the firmament is and the different realms and different layers and what those dimensions look like. And I will try to find a photo for you guys in the chat or in the show notes, but it does make a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. So, all right, moving away from biblical talk and into kind of more of the obvious reasons that a lot of people think the earth is flat, because again, not everyone is down this biblical rabbit hole. So the horizon, for one, always appears at this perfectly flat 60 degrees around us, regardless of altitude. There are people that have flown drones and other, I don't know, whatever, balloons with no fisheye, no curvature lenses on their own, and they are not seeing any curvature of the horizon at all. Only NASA and other government agencies show the curvature in their videos that a lot of people say are a form of CGI. But any independent person that has gone and brought their own equipment up, even like up to 20 miles high, there is no curve. The ocean is really what gets me though, because if the earth was at a curve, I believe our oceans would just be different in general, like just completely a completely different energy. And so again, like when we look out to sea level, it's flat. Has anyone ever seen the curvature of the earth? That's my question. Has anyone ever seen the curvature of the earth? Let me know. So, if we're spinning at the rate which they say we are, let's just say that we are, okay? So, there's this Stonehenge called Georgia Guidestones. It actually doesn't exist anymore. So, that's past tense. It was called Georgia Guidestones, located in Georgia in the USA. These stones were actually destroyed in 2022. No idea why that could have happened. But obviously, we know they are destroying our evidence and our truth. And so when it was a stone circle, there was this little hole in one of the stones that if you look through it, you see Polaris is directly, can't talk today, directly through that hole. And has not moved once in the 40 years that this stone circle, wow, I really can't talk today, was constructed, because I think it was created in the 80s and then destroyed in 2 years ago. So in all that time, Polaris was directly through the hole. So if we're moving through space, wouldn't Polaris have moved? Like, wouldn't, you know what I'm trying to say? I'm confusing myself. Anyway, I'm sorry if you guys are confused too. I think that part of it probably is that we don't understand the science in the way that they're explaining it. Like they're saying, "Oh, it's because of this," but it's not hitting intuitively. And they're not providing like enough information for us to fully understand it. I feel maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just really struggle with math and science, but I just feel like if we are moving like that, Polaris would not have been seen in that exact place for 40 years. I don't know. All right, fam, I think that's all for now, something to chew on. Let me know your thoughts. As always, see you guys in the Beyond the Veil chat. For anyone who's following along and wants to keep talking about this and more, anyone who's looking for community of sovereign human beings on the spiritual path, join us. The link is in the show notes. And find me on TikTok as I'm diving deep into all of these topics. If you've got questions, ask me in the comments on TikTok and I am responding there. Thank you guys so much for listening to this, for being here, for your support, and I'll see you next time. Bye.